next to me. All right. Hey, well, good afternoon. I am attorney Demario Solomon Simmons, and I have the great pleasure of representing this wonderful community here in Tulsa that suffered from the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, and obviously the last two living survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which is 110-year-old Mother Viola Ford Fletcher and 109-year-old Mother Leslie Benefield Randall, who will be 110 on November 10th. And while they're not here with us physically, they do know what's happening. I do have Mother Fletcher's niece and also Uncle Red's daughter here, Muriel Watson, and Mother Randall's granddaughter and caretaker, LaDonna Penny. I also have my dear sister, Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, who's a direct descendant of a Tulsa Race Massacre victim, and we also have Chief Amasan, who's also a direct descendant of a Tulsa Race Massacre survivor and victim. You also will hear from later on from Congressman Al Green out of Houston, Texas, who's been working very closely with us on this issue as we seek justice and reparations for the survivors, the descendants, and the Greenwood community. I am so excited today to announce that this morning or this afternoon, after years and years and years, decades of pushing the federal government to first recognize that the massacre occurred, and two, to actually do something about it, to recognize it, to do an evaluation of it, to do something that can move justice forward. I'm so excited to announce that this morning, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Christian Clark, announced that the United States federal government Department of Justice will open a review and evaluation of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. It is about time. It only took 103 years. But this is a joyous occasion, a momentous day, an amazing opportunity for us to make sure that what happened here in Tulsa is understood for what it was, the largest crime scene in the history of this country. A crime scene that not only impacted the two living survivors, all these survivors who are now deceased on this wall. Over 10,000 black people suffered through the massacre. Over 1,550 homes and businesses burnt down to the ground. Over 3,000 people disappeared to never be heard from again. What it did not only to this community, but for black people throughout this country. And for our federal government to have never, ever recognized this with an actual report is a travesty. It was a conspiracy of silence that has gone on for decades and decades and decades. And of course, we were honored when, led by Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, we had President Biden here right in this very building in 2021, right here at the Greenwood Culture Center. And he said he met with my clients. He met with Mother Randall. He met with Uncle Red. He met with Mother Fletcher. He promised that they would get justice. We also met with the Vice President, Kamala Harris, who's now running for president, in D.C. She said she stood with the survivors. And today, the Biden-Harris administration are standing with the survivors, and we're thankful for that. But it didn't come without our fighting for this. We have had multiple meetings with the Department of Justice, both in Washington, D.C., on Zoom, and around this country. I bet you Christian Clark will tell you anytime she saw us, we were asking the question, when are you going to do something about the massacre? Every elected official we talked to about this issue, and it wasn't just something that we've been talking about in the last 4 or 5 years. This goes back decades. I traveled with most of these people on the wall, Chief also, in the early 2000s back and forth to D.C., fighting for justice. This community will never stop fighting for justice. This community would never stop fighting for reparations. This community would never forget what happened to our people, just for being black, just for being successful, just for having self-respect that they would serve and try to protect the life of Dick Rowland so he would not be lynched. So we are excited today. This has been a difficult journey, a lot of obstacles, a lot of odds, a lot of opposition, but today we have a victory. Today we have a victory. And as we see our state rep and soon-to-be state senator, Regina Goodwin, who is a direct descendant of one of the most pioneering members of Greenwood, this is a great day for all descendants. As we have the federal government, I spoke to them twice today. They said they're going to work with us to take more testimony, to look at more documents, and they are committed to having their evaluation, their report completed by the end of the year. So we have a lot of work to do, but we're happy to do it, and we're happy to stand with so many of our supporters. I cannot name everyone, but there's a few I have to name because they've been with us so strongly with anything we needed. Obviously, the Justice for Greenwood team. Yes. The Terrence Crutcher Foundation. Our amazing legal team, which includes Schulte, Ross, and Zabel, Professor Eric Miller, Spencer Bryant, and Stephen Terrell, and Cordell Cephas, and Chandra Johnson Peoples, and maybe Jana and I don't want to miss anyone, but we have an amazing legal team. Emma Weinsberg, my paralegal, an amazing legal team. And so many people at Schulte, Ross, and Zabel, like Mackenzie Haynes, and Erica Simonson, and Randall Adams, and Michael Schwartz. There's so many that I can name. They have been with us. My mentor, my big brother, Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative, has been with us from day one. Damon Hewitt of the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights has been with us from day one. My sister, Angela Rye. My sister, Tiffany Cross. My brother, Roland Martin. My sister, Karen Hunter of SiriusXM, have been with us every step of the way. Yes. The Rabin Group out of Washington, D.C., the Congressional Black Caucus as a whole, but I have to point out a few of the members that's been with us for over 25 years. People like Representative Maxine Waters. People like our departed sister, Sheila Jackson Lee. I wish she was here right now. Other deceased members like John Conyers, Representative John Conyers, who introduced legislation for us back in the mid-2000s. And one of the individuals that we're working so close, well, two that we're working very closely with right now is Representative Hank Johnson of Georgia, and then Representative Al Green of Houston, Texas, who you will hear from today in a moment. I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the shoulders we stand upon right here on Greenwood. Yes. The people like Otis Clark, the people like Dr. A.C. Jackson, the people like J.B. Stratford, the people like A.J. Smitherman, and so many of these folks you see on this wall who suffered through the massacre. We stand on their shoulders. The people like Professor and Attorney Charles Ogletree, the people like Attorney B.C. Franklin, and there's so many more that never got to see this momentous day. Senator Maxine Horner, Representative Don Ross. So many individuals have made this fight possible. But it's one thing that Regina always says I like. She said, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, we will continue to fight for justice and reparations. And with the Department of Justice now opening an official inquiry, we have something that can help us move this ball forward, and we're going to continue to fight. And as Kamala Harris says, the VP says, when we fight, we what? We win.
All I can say is wow. I remember being in this room maybe just a month or so ago, a few weeks back, very disappointed that the Oklahoma Supreme Court dismissed our case. So today is a really good day to denounce hate, no matter how far back it goes. Y'all can clap for that, no matter how far back it goes. And today, my family and community are deeply grateful that the U.S. Department of Justice is finally preparing to review the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. This tragedy has been ignored for far too long, and this long overdue action is a step towards acknowledging the immense suffering endured by survivors and their descendants. The dead cannot cry out for justice. It is our duty as the living to do so for them. The last two survivors of the massacre, Mother Fletcher, Mother Randall, they continue to bravely demand the justice that they have deserved for over a century. Many descendants, including myself, carry on that fight alongside them, striving to shed light on the truth and ensure the atrocities of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre are never forgotten or ignored. After the heartbreaking failures of Oklahoma courts to deliver justice to those who experienced the horror firsthand and the adverse generational impact that followed, I leave you with this quote from my mentor, our mentor, Brian Stevenson. This community will continue to stand on hope, and hope is what will get you to stand up when people tell you to sit down. And today, we continue to stand and stand for Greenwood. Thank you.
The descendants of those who suffered over 100 years ago are standing here today. They wanted us to die. They wanted us to suffer from historic amnesia. Most importantly, they wanted us to forget what Napoleon Bonaparte said when he said, history is a set of lies that have been agreed upon. Those people who have agreed upon the lies here in this city are about to meet their maker, because we're going to investigate. We're going to sterilize the infection that this city is contaminated with. The one that, when I look at my grandchildren, I see my grandparents. When I look at Dr. Crutcher, I see her grandmother. When I look at Miss Goodwin, Senator Goodwin, I look at all those ancestors, those people who built this community. This moment is one you should never forget. My grandfather should be in one of these picture frames, but he died 2 years after they announced the lawsuit. And he stood with Johnny Cochran, he stood with Charles Ogletree. So people who may not understand this passion and those who have been part of this fight from the very beginning, know this today: we will never stop fighting.
Representative Goodwin, would you like to say anything? We would be blessed if you could.
To Attorney Solomon Simmons for the work that you continue to do.
Thank you.
To all, Tiffany, Chief, Malie, LaDonna, this is an ongoing battle. It is a fight that is worth having. And when it's all said and done, the truth is always going to be known. We know what the truth is. And we always say we got to have truth tellers, you got to have truth listeners, that the Department of Justice has decided to take this on and to just look into it. It says that we are not forgotten, our ancestors are not forgotten, and the generations to come, they're worth fighting for. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. There's Malie, there's Muriel, there's Ike. This is Muriel. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, I think we have Representative Al Green on the phone, and before he come, I do want to acknowledge another person that's not here with us that is so instrumental in us being here is Miss Eddie Faye Gates.
Yes, yes, yes.
Miss Eddie Faye Gates, who maybe single-handedly
Yes,
was able to document these stories.
yes.
Now, Kevin Ross, these are individuals who passed on but had been a part of this fight for generations and decades that didn't get to see such a victory. And I just want to make sure that we acknowledge them. Well, I think we have Representative Al Green on the line. Representative Green, can you hear us?
I hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. And if I may, I'd like to thank God, if I may, as our initial means of approaching this, because God has given us the opportunity to correct an injustice, but He's also blessed us with two survivors who have lived now for 109 years, Miss Randall, and 110 years for Miss Fletcher. These survivors are the living evidence that we need to show the world and tell the world what actually happened. This was an abomination. It left people as victims, homeless, penniless, and unfortunately remediless. So today, we should be grateful to all the persons who've spoken, but also, as was said, to the Justice Department, to the Biden administration, for bringing us a step closer to receiving the justice that they deserve. Because we know that had this criminal act, and it was a criminal act, this criminal abomination been perpetrated on white Americans, the courts would have awarded the white victims compensatory as well as punitive monetary justice. The black victims deserve no less. I'm honored to have sent a letter to the president and to the Justice Department asking for justice for the many victims of this massacre. And I'm grateful to those of you who have been in the fight. And I can only say to you, just stand your ground. I'm with you. You mentioned Jackson Lee. She is still with us in spirit.
Yes.
God bless all of you. And I'm grateful to all of you for what you've done. We're one step closer to justice.
Thank you, Representative Green. I also want to make sure that I do also recognize the Emmett Till family and Emmett Till Institute, who we had a great pleasure of working with back in August, where we had a national event with them during the Democratic National Convention, where we met Reverend Emmett Till's cousin, Reverend Parker, and members of his family, who lent their support to this cause. And I definitely believe that that was an important factor for the Department of Justice to open this inquiry pursuant to the Emmett Till Cold Case Act, where you have the Emmett Till family saying, hey, this needs to happen. Reverend Al Sharpton with National Action Network has been someone that's been with us on this fight. The Human Rights Watch, Nicole Austin Hillary, who's no longer there, but she was very instrumental. Color of Change with Rashad Robertson was also very instrumental. So we have many, many partners. I can't name them all, but it's just some that just really stand out because anytime we've called upon them, they've been there. I'll leave you with this. When Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark, who we want to say again, thank you. Thank you, Kristen Clark, for pushing this through and enduring all that we pushed her on, and we're going to continue to push. She understands that. But one thing she said today during her announcement is that the federal government had never weighed in to the massacre, and that was wrong, and that was time for that to end. And then the last thing she told me is there's a lot of work ahead. Well, this community has proven we're not afraid of work. We built Greenwood. We rebuilt it after the massacre. We've been surviving through urban renewal. We're still here surviving and fighting, and we're going to make sure to work very closely with the Department of Justice to get the very best report we possibly can so we continue to get justice and reparations for our survivors, our descendants, this community, and for the larger black community of America. Because if you have justice for Greenwood, then that's justice for black people in America. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about, just to confirm, so this is a review pursuant to the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crimes Act, and can you talk a little bit about the process and what people can expect in terms of the time frame? You mentioned that they're wanting to release something by the end of the year.
Yeah. Yes, that is what this inquiry is about. It's based upon the Emmett Till Act. And one of the things that Kristen Clark talked about this morning, and we have a copy of that video, I'm sure we'll make it available on our social media challenge on our website, She said the Cold Case Act, for those who don't know, are for civil rights crimes that were committed before December 31st, 1979. But she made a point to say we just don't look at things from the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, or the 40s. We go all the way back, obviously, to 1921. So I've never participated in a cold case investigation. I do know back in May of 2023, we did take Mother Fletcher and Uncle Red to DC, and we met with the FBI investigator. That was part of our continually push to advocate. That was one of about 4 or 5 meetings that we had. What I was told this morning is that within the next week, we will schedule some time to get together and to review other documents that we do have, that we have uncovered during this last 4 or 5 years, and other witnesses that we're going to put forth, other descendants and other witnesses that we believe are very important to this story. And obviously, right now, we have the mass graves going on here in Tulsa, and we think that's something that the DOJ should also be very, very made aware of what's going on there.
So, Attorney, you say you want justice to come out of this. What's that going to look like for you?
Well, at this point, one of the main things that we wanted to have happen is that, number one, that no one would ever talk about the Tulsa Race Massacre and not discuss what happens to the people, where's the justice and reparations for those people. So that was one of our main goals, and I think we've accomplished that. Anytime there's a discussion about Tulsa, it automatically, someone said, well, what about the survivors? So I think we've accomplished that. That is a sense of justice. Number two, we wanted the federal government to recognize this formally as the largest crime scene in the history of the United States, because we feel very strongly that if you cannot recognize what happened to Mother Fletcher and Mother Randall as children, then no one is safe in America. If you could be bombed and no one investigates it or holds anyone accountable, then none of us are safe. So those 2 things, we've already knocked those things off our check mark. And the third thing is we want to know more about the massacre. We only know about 10% of what actually happened, who actually participated. Those are things that we don't have the capacity as private attorneys to get some of that information that we hope the federal government can help fill in some of those gaps. All right, thank you. Do you have a question, sir?
What's next?
Well, like I said, in the next week or so, I'm expecting to meet again with the Department of Justice, particularly the Civil Rights Criminal Division, and start the process. They're going to work very closely with myself and our legal team and Justice for Greenwood, and we're very thankful for it. We're very thankful that we have the opportunity to put forth more information, to have a comprehensive report that will really forever, as long as there's United States of America, this report from the federal government will talk about what happened here in Tulsa, and hopefully that will help us get closer to the justice and reparations that are still due and still owing. Thanks. Yeah.